I have a hunch what I'm feeling is what many of you are feeling, which is you love Star Wars. Maybe you go to Disneyland Star Wars night. Maybe you just love the Star Wars merchandise. Maybe you just love and obsess over the movies and TV shows. And for the past 5 to 6 years, it just really hasn't been as fun to be a Star Wars fan. And for me, that started with the Disney Plus endeavor of Star Wars, which I just think has been ultimately a failure for Disney. I really liked the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian, don't get me wrong. When CGI Luke came in, I was like, okay, this is good, but let's just kind of like move forward from this. And we just never did. The Book of Boba Fett was a fiasco. Mandalorian season 3 was just a disaster. Like, Obi-Wan Kenobi was such a boring show that I had high hopes for. Ahsoka, I think, is the worst of all this. The Acolyte, with all its controversy, was just like, cast aside. Like, I liked what I saw of the Skeleton Crew and need to finish it, but ultimately the past 5 to 6 years just haven't been rewarding. And then when you look at the movie side, like, Rise of Skywalker was also just really bad, and I'm just like, what is there to get excited about Star Wars anymore? Which makes me so excited when I finally got to see Andor season 1 and was like, oh, this is why I invest in Star Wars, and this is the storytelling that I love. This is what great storytelling can do. And now we're on Andor season 2, and it's just like, perfect. There is a reason for me to feel invested in Star Wars. There is something for me to love in Star Wars, even if it's far and few between. I appreciate the Disney Plus experiment just because it gave us a show like Andor, which I called season 1 the best thing of Star Wars since Empire Strikes Back. And I stand by that. I think season 1 of Andor is incredible. So I'm so glad that 6 episodes into Andor season 2, I feel like that thing that was missing for me from Star Wars is no longer missing, and it's delivering. Like, Andor season 2 is delivering in its story of the rebellion. And that's what essentially Andor is about. I'm not going to get into any major spoilers. I know some of you have different viewing habits of how you watch. I don't want to get into any of that. So I'm just going to broadly talk about what Andor season 2 thus far is about at its halfway point. And it is what it is. Like, it is a show about the rebellion and what it means to rebel against authority. Season 1, as I have it written down here, is the radicalization that leads to the need to rebel. And then season 2 is the unraveling and infighting and cost that comes with rebellion. And I think that's what's made season 2 such a rewarding story thus far. And I will be the first to admit, like, if I'm looking at the first 6 episodes of season 1 versus the first 6 episodes of season 2, I find season 1 to be far more kinetic, exciting, just awe-inspiring, where season 2, I think, is far more methodical. It's far more plot-heavy, and not plot-heavy in the sense that, like, oh, like, we're doing so much with it, but it's just far more dense than season 1 is. Season 1, and for the first few episodes, it felt like we were dealing with a few main characters. Season 2, it's like there's like 10 to 15 characters kind of maneuvering around this story. It kind of reminds me of Game of Thrones in that way. And season 1 is just a lot more fun to watch at that point. Like, it's full of rousing speeches. It's political navigations and ideologies being explored. It's the savviness of politics and rebelling in the shadows against oppression. Like, that's the fun thing of season 1. Like, it is all in the shadows. And it's through the lens of Luthen, played by Skarsgård, in this show that I think makes the show so rewarding to watch in season 1. Season 2 is kind of the polar opposite of that. War is hell, which is the point of season 1, but is far more emphasized here. Rebellion has a cost, and also, if you engage in the tactics of your enemy, then you end up becoming like your enemy. And I think that's what season 2 is exploring. We are following this Luthen character who is the political navigator of this show, essentially kind of more and more lose humanity and lose his grip. There's so much to this world and so much about the cost of rebellion, which that is what it is. Like, there is a cost to fight authority. Season 1, we see the highs. This one, we are seeing the oppression. We are seeing the disaster. We are seeing the pain. We are seeing the death. And Season 2 thus far is far more darker. It's far more sadder. Death feels inevitable in the show. And maybe that's because we know where Rogue One has to lead. We know where we have to get to. And we also know who's not in Rogue One. And we know who is in Rogue One. So we have a really good belief to think that a lot of people are continuously dying in season 2 of Andor. And thus far, we're seeing that. People kind of die left and right in this show. And it is a show talking about death constantly. And it is talking about sacrifice and artificial sacrifice. A sacrifice that is real and a sacrifice that is made to build something and basically be a sacrificial lamb. Like, that is so much of the politics of Andor season 2. And for some people like me, that's extremely rewarding to watch. And it also is just like a pretty like dense, hard show to get into at times. Like, I notice myself kind of grinding with the show where I'm like, where are we going? What are we doing here? Like, season 1, I had a clear story arc that I kind of felt the entire time, seeing the character of Andor join this rebellion. Season 2 is like, what's the point? Like, a lot of the time it feels like, what's the point? What are we doing here? Where are these characters going? And how can you fight something so oppressive in the Empire? Like, it almost rings hopeless. Season 1, as I describe it, is the raveling. It's the raveling of a rebellion and the web of lies that these characters weave to basically form this rebellion. Season 2 is the unraveling. This show is completely about power being lost, specifically with the people in the rebellion who have power. And there's a few key characters. That's Mon Mothma, and that is the Luthen character, and in many ways, that is the Andor character in his personal life. That is what we are seeing kind of just lose consciousness and lose their ability to have the hold that they had. Season 2 follows Andor as he becomes more involved with the rebellion, basically acting as this James Bond type spy in the shadows, kind of going on missions for Luthen. And then meanwhile, it is everything around Luthen just starting to collapse. The power that he holds in season 1, he has bugs, he has taps everywhere in the Empire, across the galaxy. He basically, it feels like he knows everything going on. He is spying on everyone. And people seemingly are starting to realize they're being spied on. And it kind of causes this huge panic for Luthen. Like, this is a show where he is constantly having to deal with loose ends. And in season 2, they just keep coming. And if you deal with one loose end, well, that brings up 5 more. This is unsustainable. That is the point of the first 6 episodes. This cannot be how the rebellion goes. And it all kind of feels like it's leading to something that needs to happen to the Luthen character. It's not a spoiler to say that I think they could kill him off. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with this character, but there is clearly an unraveling, and people are starting to get frustrated and ask questions of Luthen, which I think is real to how power works. And when you start losing that grip on your power just falls away quickly. And how Andor season 2 is structured is it's week to week, 3 episodes story arcs being told over a month. And it's the years between the Battle of Yavin. So the first 3 episodes start 4 years. The next week, which was our previous week, is 3 years. Presumably next week is going to be 2 years. And then the last week is going to be a year / right up to the Battle of Yavin is what I'm assuming. And what I find so interesting about this show is, and I think season 1 does this really well, and I think season 2 is even more emphasizing that, good is good. And I think that's also like a really important thing to remember while we're talking about Andor, which is there is a justness to the cause that the rebellion is doing. And even if the practices they engage in aren't always the best, or some of the characters seem very questionable within it, they are still fighting on something that is ultimately righteous because the other side is authoritarianism. However, like I said, that also makes this vendetta where good and evil have an overlay and we're in this gray zone. That's where basically every character in Andor operates. And you see that throughout season 1. Mon Mothma is obviously this very key figure in the rebellion, as we see in the original trilogy and in Rogue One and in all other canon. However, she has to do stuff in season 1 and season 2 that really, like, you really see the sacrifice that she's putting into and where her moral consciousness needs to switch and lie. In season 1, she has to make the choice to basically give her daughter's hand in marriage to make a partnership to get money for the rebellion. Like, that is a huge arc, and season 2 explores that in depth. There's this wonderful moment at the end of episode 3. It's the beginning of, maybe it is the end of episode 3 or the beginning, I don't remember, but somewhere in episode 3 where Mon Mothma basically tells her daughter, like, hey, like, my mother didn't give me a choice to be married and who I got to be married to. I'm giving you this choice, and if you want to walk out, like, you can right now. And the daughter sizes up her mother so well in this scene. The daughter's basically like, there's no choice. Like, you're saying there's a choice to make yourself feel better about this situation, but we all know I can't do what you're saying I can do. That's the implications of this show, and I think that's what's so rewarding about this show. One, it's the dialogue being delivered. I think Andor season 1 and season 2 just have masterful writers. Obviously, a lot of this comes from Tony Gilroy, who is the writer of the show, and I believe a few of his family members also work as the writers, along with other collaborators of Gilroy throughout his career. They just make this world feel dense, but like, that's what it's doing, and that's what this show is doing effectively, where you see characters have to basically live in this gray zone. Andor, even like where you start with him in season 1, like, we start with him basically, if I recall, like, he's outside of a bar, probably a little drunk, and he ends up shooting some Imperial officers. He basically shoots police officers, as we're kind of like led to believe from the opening of Andor. And in this season, he does kind of questionable stuff throughout the episode. Like, there's are a lot of moments where these characters need to live in the gray. And then Luthen lives in the gray, maybe even bordering on the evil. Like, he is obviously doing it for a cause that we know ends up being just, because it is the freedom and liberation of the galaxy from the tyrannical reigns of Emperor Palpatine and the Empire. But to do so, you have to actually move over from the gray to the evil. And it's this incredible speech that Luthen gives at the end of season 1, where he's basically, I need to use the tool of my enemies to destroy them. Season 2 explores those tools. And guess what? Those tools are often terrible. And like, there is this wonderful moment, because in season 2, we get Ben Mendelsohn guest starring in as Director Krennic, his character from Rogue One, a character he was born to play. He is excellent in this role. And there is this huge overarching story that is basically introduced right at the beginning of season 2. It is that they need to mine this one planet of its natural resources that will basically lead to the destruction of this planet. And like, right away, they're basically like, the question is, how is the Empire going to justify this genocide of this people? And so they start using propaganda. They're like, well, maybe we could kind of picture these people as like just absolute, like, no worth. Like, we can just kill them off. Like, it's not a big deal. They're subhuman almost, I think is the word that they use in it. And then they learn, like, okay, well, actually, what if we basically just have the people of this planet kill themselves off? Like, what if we basically influence events that, one, leads to people believing that they are subhuman, and two, basically just causes so much infighting that they collapse in on each other? That's the Empire's plot. And then that way they can mine the planet of its natural resources, so they can use it to build a Death Star that will then commit more genocide. And they kind of frame it, and it's this one thing that I really love. It's the bureaucracy of Andor, specifically in season 2. And we see it a lot in season 1 too, but it's the bureaucracy of evil. That is such an important factor in this. Even as it's presented by Director Krennic to his Empire pals, he doesn't present it as like, we're going to go down and kill everybody. He's like, well, we need this resource because it can be used for sustainable energy, which is obviously great. And it's going to help so many people out in our galaxy. Like, ultimately, they frame themselves as holy. They frame themselves as like, we're doing a good and we just need this resource to do good. They're not like twiddling their mustaches and being like, oh yeah, well, we need this resource because we're going to use it to kill millions and millions of people. Because even in this scene, when they're presenting like what they need to do to this planet, you can see people actively in this boardroom getting uncomfortable with like the implications of what they have to do to this planet, and that they would basically be in charge of helping commit a genocide. Like, you see that uncomfortability. So you have to kind of swallow that. And that's what these characters are trying to do. Like, they're trying to justify it, be like, that's not actually what we're doing. As it may sound bad, that's not what we mean to do. And again, that's the bureaucracy, and that's the lies. That's the sustainable energy. And then to get sustainable energy, you need to propaganda to dehumanize, which makes it easier for them to kill, which gets you what you want. The reason I mention this all is because Luthen's in many ways kind of doing the same thing. He learns of this plan and he's like, well, if we basically got the people of this planet to rebel, then what they could do is they would rebel. And to be honest, and he kind of says this, like, they'll be crushed and they'll be killed and they'll be made martyrs. And then people will finally see the atrocities of the Empire and open their eyes to what's going on. And on the meantime, we can also like really use this planet and gain a lot of its resources and wealth and influence and all that to our benefit. They're basically saying the same thing. The Empire wants these people dead. And Luthen, maybe like he doesn't necessarily want to see the death of this planet, but he's like, it really does serve a great purpose for us that will then help us liberate the galaxy. That's what this show is about. It is about the decisions and how good isn't always good and how bad is ultimately in this show. There's no like question. There's no like, well, bad can be good sometimes. Like, no, evil, totalitarianism, authoritarianism, fascism, like that's bad and that is unacceptable. And that is largely the point of this show. What's also then interesting though, is then when you get other characters in this world, like one of the things that I've seen a lot of in season 2 is the people within the rebellion and how they're all kind of infighting each other and how they all want different things. We explore far more radical people in it. Saw Gerrera, played by the great Forrest Whitaker, is just like incredible in season 2. He has like one scene, I think it's either in episode 5. I think it's episode 5. There's just knockoff. Like this guy is so crazy good in season 2 of it. And he's also a freaking crazy person in this show. Like he is about as radical as you can get. He is a complete violent, like he is basically the terrorist for this rebellion. And that's why you can see other powers within the rebellion uncomfortable by Saw Gerrera. But Luthen understands that, yeah, this type of political violence serves a purpose. And this type of political terrorism and their beliefs and their extremes serve my goal. And I just need to weaponize them to the best point. You also then see in the first few episodes, we follow Andor on this home planet, which is basically people who are a part of the rebellion, who don't even understand really what the rebellion is, what it serves, who they serve. And it's again, like they just start tribal warfare over one another. And it's just, again, it's supposed to capture that this stuff is messy. It's not organized. And ultimately, like nobody is holistic. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is understanding. And a lot of it is just plain disgusting, and that's the cost of war, and that's the reality of war. I think that's what Andor does really well. I want to see more from season 2. I want the second half to give me the feelings of glee that I get from like season 1, where you see like the prison escape scene, Or you see the scene at the funeral that ends season 1, which is basically the full-on riot against the stormtroopers and the Empire. Or want to get the moment of the heist in episode 6 of season 1, where they are stealing stuff from the Empire, taking hostages, escaping, all of that. Like, that is the high of this show. And it hasn't hit that for me yet, but it is so clearly leading to something. And it's like so direct about like, okay, this is all going to come to a show sometime soon in season 2. And that's where everyone's going to be there. It just feels like it is all going to basically explode. It is a pot of boiling water. And in the end of episode 6, which is a really tense, a really good episode, that you're also like, is there more? Like, I was kind of thought there was going to be more in it. The water's now just sizzling. Really, really soon, you can tell it's just going to get explosive. You can tell that is going to just start bubbling everywhere. And once it does it, it's going to be uncontrollable. And that's what I think season 2 is going to be. I can't rate this show because I haven't seen the second half. I know other people have, and I've heard the second half is better than the first half. But like, the first half is so contingent on what the second half is going to deliver that if the second half doesn't deliver, then season 2 is definitely going to be a letdown and it doesn't work as well. Season 1 has a lot of just standalone episodes that I can watch. Season 2 so far has a lot of moments that I can watch, but without the full story arc in place, it does feel extremely dependent in a way that I don't think season 1 did. I think there was an independency to season 1's episode to episode that made it an easier watch. Season 2 does feel contingent. With that all said, loving the show, hope to see more from it, really want this show to deliver, and I have high hopes for Andor season 2 thus far. Let me know, are you guys feeling the same way? I hope you guys are, and I hope you're enjoying it. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you guys consider subscribing to this channel for more.